what makes young people crave the rave.
I'm curious what makes you so curious. What makes you so curious.
In the beginning was the beat.
Welcome to the Rave Curious Podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Glazer. What are we curious about? We're curious about electronic music and the culture that surrounds it. And how do we satisfy that curiosity? We do it by talking to some of the people who have dedicated their lives to the electronic music scene, the DJs, producers, promoters, and more. My guest on today's podcast is Kate Simko. Kate has a new project, Kate Simko and London Electronic Orchestra. Basically, it is music composed by Kate, performed by Kate, along with an ensemble of classically trained musicians, cello, violin, harp, that sort of thing. Kate is a classically trained pianist, although I think most people probably know her more for her dance floor oriented music on labels such as Spectral Sound, Leftroom, Ghost International, Get Physical, Last Night on Earth. A lot of really cool techno, tech house music that she produced throughout the 2000s and early 2010s. Is that the word for it? But yeah, this new record is a real departure, and the background on it is really interesting. Kate actually took some time off from DJing and producing electronic music, about 2 years more or less, to go and study classical composition. Talk about kind of what that meant for her career, what it was, what it took to kind of pump the brakes and try something new. Now, this is something that I think's come up quite a bit lately. The notion of DJ burnout. Probably the biggest example is, of course, Avicii, who last week got all the headlines when he announced he was quote unquote retiring at the age of 26. Now, granted, Avicii is a multi-million-dollar EDM brand as opposed to Kate, who's obviously more of an underground artist. But she had a career. She had a real career. Lots of records. Lots of gigs all over the world, DJing and making music for a living. And there's a lot of people who, once that starts, it's really hard to stop. There are DJs who've literally been on tour for decades. It's not like you're in a band where you record an album, you release an album, you tour the album, maybe for a few months or maybe even a year and a half, and then you take a break and go back and do it again. The life of a DJ is really constant touring, constant DJing. You're in a different city virtually every weekend for some guys, some of these guys, their entire lives. And that, that's starting to prove to be troublesome for some people. It definitely takes a lot out of you. The constant, different time zones, the constant staying out all night. It's hard on your health. It's hard on relationships. It's hard it's hard on creativity. There's a lot of artists who, when they were first coming up, they had some really, really brilliant music, some great records, and let's be honest, a lot of times they don't maintain that level of quality. They once they get popular and they start DJing constantly, the music can suffer. Not necessarily the DJing suffers, but the producing definitely suffers, because it's really hard to make music when you're traveling and not sleeping 50 weeks out of the year or whatever it is. A lot of these big name DJs do. So Kate was definitely on that path. She decided that wasn't the path she wanted to pursue. She took some time off and worked on herself and on her creativity, and the result is this awesome new album. And as we also talk about, it also kind of got her back into loving dance music and loving DJing and loving, the parties and the traveling and all the stuff. So, I think a lot of DJs feel like if they hit pause, there's no way to hit play again. And Kate is proving that it's not true. You can pause, you can work on yourself, you can work on your art. Then when you want to press play, you might even be more ready for it, and the world might be more ready for you as well. That definitely seems the case. Kate, so that's what we have for you today. Real quick program note, if you listened last week to my interview with Mr. C, you heard that my microphone was kind of distorted, kind of loud. That's still a little bit the case on this podcast. I actually recorded these back to back, so the problem wasn't completely fixed, but I promise you that it will be fixed from all podcasts going forward. So if you listened to the last podcast with Mr. C and you were annoyed, and you listen to this podcast and you're annoyed, I promise you this is the last time. There will not be any more annoying podcasts, or if they are annoying, it will not be annoying because the microphone was too loud. But again, it's just my microphone. Kate sounds just fine. So yeah, here we go. As always, if you haven't, subscribe on iTunes. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Blah, blah, blah. Give us a review. Rave Curious Podcast. Thanks for listening. Played last night.
Yeah.
Was the Super Freak 14-year anniversary. Mm-hmm. So how well are you like connected with that crew?
I just did a remix for David Scuba. So that was sort of the connection.
Gotcha.
I think, that they have asked me as well if I'd be interested in maybe doing an EP or a full release with them. And basically, when they asked, I said, I'm pretty swamped. So a remix would be more realistic for right now.
Right.
So I did the remix, and I was really happy actually because it was like the most popular track of my set, and that was awesome. I was so happy. So,
it was good. You played a little tougher than I've heard you play before.
Okay.
Last night, but I'm trying to think like. Other times I think when I've seen you, it's been like you have like the opening set at Watergate or something like that, where it's more.
Yeah, totally. I think my style's changed a bit too after living in London for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Just influenced by a different sound.
Yeah.
And also, like you said, playing more often, I think, headline slots. So just figuring out, how do you step up the energy?
Mm-hmm.
And that was definitely like a moment of transition, which I talked to a lot of DJs about, how do you do that? And then depending where you go, even as a bigger DJ, somebody like Seth, like then how do you play for massive festivals and like really big,
right.
Main,
Yeah, I think it seems like a lot of DJs get caught in that middle ground where it's like, look, everybody knows when you first DJ, you play all the big fucking hits and you annoy everybody because you only play the big hits, and that's what you do the first 2 years you're a DJ because you don't know any better.
Right.
And then if you grow into being, a better DJ and start taking it more seriously, then you learn the art of, not doing that.
And then you play the coolest stuff. So you're like the coolest opening DJ, and everybody's like, you play the cool stuff, and they're almost like jealous that they can play the that you play the B-sides that they can't play anymore. And so you really are like a purist in terms of what you play. But then when you start getting booked to be a headliner and you have to like step it up and bring up the energy, then that's the moment to be like, okay, how do you keep it real for yourself? But deliver to the audience. Yeah, exactly. How do you deliver it but keep it cool?
So you think you've had to bring it more often lately? Yeah,
in the last couple of years, and that's cool. I'm happy you said that. I definitely don't want to play too chill if people are there and want to boogie.
Well, nobody really wants to like I don't like being out at 2 in the I'm a total fucking nerd, and I don't want to I find myself getting more into big dumb records lately that I think I've been in a long time because there's such a lack of energy, I think, at a lot of stuff now.
Do you find that? Okay.
A little bit.
Okay.
That everyone's trying to kind of out weird and out trippy.
Okay. Is this like that Tulum kind of trippy sound, or what do you mean? Which I forget what the name is, but yeah.
Isn't it, they just call it tech house?
I don't know. There's like a new Tulum psychedelic house thing going on.
Oh, okay.
That's new, and that's like trippy. But yeah,
like the BPM scene or something that's like native to.
I heard that it was at the SX festival as well quite a bit now. So
I didn't even know that one.
That's the one that just happened the weekend of the 12th before Miami.
Okay.
But yeah, a good friend from New York was telling me that's like really popular right now. I don't even fully know what this is, but I thought that's what you meant. It is a bit more chill and psychedelic and weird.
I just feel like everything for the past few years has been, and I guess it's, I'm avoiding festivals and big events, but like even like the music. I don't know. It feels like it goes one of two ways. Like it's either overly deep or overly obvious, or maybe I've just gotten super fussy and.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've heard more of the just like really rolling tech house, which is kind of the opposite, where it's just sort of like just constantly just like boom, 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 like kind of 126 BPM rolling tech house.
I don't know. It's just funny. Like I don't know. Like I went and saw like Pete Tong and Houghton played together.
Okay.
Here in LA like a month ago.
Yeah.
And I found myself way more into Pete Tong's set. Which I would not have expected.
Yeah, really? Okay, yeah.
My disposition, I was just like he played a couple just like big fun, good records.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I think that's how the London scene is more, to be honest, too. That it's a pretty like big record town.
Yeah. So, are you going out a lot in London?
Yeah. I mean, I've been working on, and I'm sure we're going to get into it, but I've been working on London Electronic Orchestra project quite a bit. So, when I'm around, I'll go out. I mean, there's always so many friends and DJs every weekend there. So it's definitely like picking and choosing. But yeah, I mean, I definitely try to go out and hear music as much as I can. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, my experience clubbing in London is fairly limited.
Okay.
Like I didn't make it over there a lot. So
we hung out that one time.
We did. That was my one like truly great, awesome London weekend where it's like me and Philip, we were out for like
Philip and Mia, right?
No, Mia wasn't with us.
Okay.
It was ostensibly a work trip for Philip.
Right.
Because he had the PR agency.
Right.
And so he was going to like and the booking so he was going to like meet promoters. We were gone for so long that we were staying in this bed and breakfast that was owned by Hot Chip's former manager.
Okay.
And she had she had walked away from music and was running this Airbnb.
Yeah.
And so we were there. I think we slept there the first night, and then we didn't go back for like 3 days. And to literally at one point she sent me an email just being like, just making sure you're okay. It's like your stuff's still here. Your stuff's fine. The room's locked. I see your computers are here. Like I'm not like.
But are you
alive? Just making sure you're okay.
Are you still in town? Right?
Exactly.
Oh my god.
Like, yeah, no, we're well, I don't know if we're okay, but we're alive.
Right. Oh.
That was a fun night. You were room 3 of Fabric.
Right.
That night. Yeah.
Who did I play with? I don't remember. Was I with Tebow, or that was longer than that? That was like the time before that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Or Laura Jones, maybe it could have been. All right.
Honestly, I mean,
yeah.
that was.
If I can't remember, you can't remember.
Yeah, that was my second time that weekend at Fabric, or third time. Like we just kept.
Amazing.
Going back and
it's a great club.
It is.
I go there like in terms of where I go. It's about 10 minutes from where I live in London, so I go there. Quite a bit, and I love the staff. They're so super welcoming, and the curation of music's great. The sound's great. So definitely,
I wish the crowd was a little more mature.
Yeah,
because I went back there for, and it was for was it a minus night? I'm thinking it was a minus night.
Okay.
Like the next time I was in London, like 2-3 years later, I went with Greg and Nicole.
Okay, cool.
And we couldn't stay. We were just like, and like our friends who were going to come weren't going to be there for like another 3 hours. And we're like, oh, we don't want to, we weren't trying to do that again.
Yeah.
So we're just like, but
yeah, it does. It's funny. It really does draw a different crowd depending on who's playing.
Okay.
Yeah. So if it's like, Marco Carolla, it's like a very different crowd than if it's Ricardo Villalobos or Seth and the Martinez Brothers. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, the best time is Fabric Birthday in October.
Right. Well,
because then it's like all the heads come out. So yeah, there's like certain times where it's just amazing.
I mean, I think of like, yeah, I guess it's really been those 2 times I've been there, but I don't know. Berlin just ruined all other clubbing for me, at least for a while. Like everywhere else I went. It was like, I mean, Amsterdam was pretty cool. Amsterdam, and it's getting cooler.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, but you loved Berlin, the clubbing scene.
I mean, it's
yeah.
People are so sick of me hearing me talk about this on this podcast. And,
Sorry, podcast
and I
people.
I keep bringing it up, and I don't live there anymore, so it's like, but it's been a huge transition coming back here, and where there's a million the options are almost as good in LA now as they are, in like New York and London and whatever musically. As far as like, I would go see, like, there was 3 different parties I could have gone to last night.
Really? What else was going on?
Well, like Chris Liebing was playing at Exchange, which is more like kind of like a big, like, downtown, but it's, kind of a, more of a big techno club. Mm-hmm. And there was something else. There's something else that came up. Like I was out, so I was like, oh, I'm surprised you're not at this thing. And I'm like, I also don't go out that much anymore. It's a once a month thing, or twice a month thing, here in LA, as opposed to
in Berlin.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. But how often are you? I mean, you're out almost every weekend now, DJing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the beginning of the year. I did not really. So like, in November and December, I was playing a lot, and then in January, I was in Mexico at BPM and stuff for the first couple weeks, and then kind of by choice, just kind of how things worked out as well. It's a slow time. I had off basically the end of January, and then ended up taking off February as well, just to wrap up a lot of stuff. I have an album coming out in May, and
yeah, definitely we're gonna talk about that. Don't worry. It's great, by the way. I really, really enjoyed it.
Okay, good. So they sent it to you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. They being infamous, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They. But no, that's cool. So basically, but I am just saying that, because I have the album coming out in May, and there's just a lot of loose ends to tie up, essentially, know? And so I use that time. And then also to get back into the studio and make some dance tracks, which has been really fun.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually been really, really fun. And I haven't put out dance music because it's one of those things where I think when you take time away, I think it's important to kind of figure out where you're coming from, and not just try to release something that's like kind of there. Mm-hmm. So I've had tracks that were sort of half finished, but I just wasn't totally sure if that's what I was feeling. And so yeah, it's been cool to kind of just be in a new direction and try to make tracks that I want to hear. I guess that's why I was really excited that this remix, for example, that taking the time to make stuff I want to hear and I want to play, that I can mix into the kind of stuff I'm playing right now. So yeah, that's what I'm focusing on now, is making a couple EPs of new house music, basically.
So do you find, you kind of go back and forth between, I would imagine, like a project like the London Orchestra,
London Electronic Orchestra.
I keep wanting to say London Symphony Orchestra,
yeah,
which someday.
Yeah,
the London Electronic Orchestra. I would imagine that process is a lot more inward looking.
Yeah, it's different. It's funny because my studio in London is next to Lucasy and Ben Sims. And there's days where Ben is in and it's just like boom, 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 boom. And I'm sitting there with Sibelius, which is this notation program, like deciding if that should be on like a violin or an octave down on a cello, and it's like playing back, with this like, MIDI sounding thing. And I'm just like, whoa. So yeah, it's definitely more inward, and you don't feel, there's, when I'm working on dance music there, it's so much more of just like, yeah, you hear the guys next to you and it's sort of like cool that you have a sort of taking breaks and just, I find a good momentum with other people there in the building. But yeah, it is a lot more introspective to do the classical writing. And I've found that most of the time, to be honest, I'll write it at home because I have an 88 key weighted keyboard. I don't have to worry about sound with the neighbors for any of that sort of composition. So that's more of, home on my own, or, sometimes late at night, I'll already be at home. So I kind of have like a different pattern for both, which is cool. I will do the classical sometimes at the dance studio, but dance music studio, but yeah, I'm kind of like making them two different things in my life, which is good. Yeah, it's a little bit, somehow I feel more balanced if I'm not just living in this one studio, and I can go between the two.
Right. So let's get into the new record and kind of the whole background on it because it's. I mean, fundamentally, it's a fusion of electronic music and classical music, which to all the listeners, you pull it off better than it sounds.
Yeah. No, totally. And the other thing too, though, it's not that it's classical music. It's just using classical instruments.
Right. Okay.
So I think that's important. You know what I mean? It's not like it sounds like, switched on Bach. Like it's like, classical music with electronic. It's what it's doing is it's substituting synthesizers or other electronic sounds that could have been there, with orchestral instruments. So for, example, I work with the harp a lot. So maybe in a track where you might have heard piano chords, I'll put the chords on a harp, or just different textures in the background that, you might have a string pad or, pads in a lot of house or techno music. And instead it's just the strings playing the pad. You know what I mean? It's not, I think the strings are functioning within the music, in a similar way that synths or, textures, electronic textures would function. Right. And they kind of blend together.
And you really have the background for this, unlike, a lot of artists who, they want to work with live musicians. They want to, everybody kind of at some point everyone will want that authentic, well, maybe not everyone. Like, I don't.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if
and you really have the background for it, which because you studied classical piano originally, right?
Yeah.
If I recall.
Way
back in the day.
Way back in the day. That's where what I first went to the university for was classical piano. And basically, while I was studying, I started interning at the radio station, and I got into IDM music. It was at University of Miami, so I met the Schematic guys, and they had a show there. So I learned about warp and scam and all of this electronic listening music, and absolutely became obsessed because I was like, wow. I mean, to me, it was really just parallel to classical in the sense that it was music without words. And these were full linear compositions, not just tools for the dance floor, which coming from Chicago and, being a raver in my teens, I mean, that was amazing. But I never thought I would be a DJ. I just saw this to somebody over the weekend. I mean, to me, growing up in Chicago, I mean, DJs were black men. They were not like blonde girls who were, I never was going to be a DJ, I thought, and also, as much as I loved house music, if I wasn't going to be a DJ, I definitely wasn't going to be a house producer. You know what I mean? So it was learning about IDM when I was studying piano that really made me think, wow, I mean, maybe I could learn how to compose music instead of just play, Beethoven sonatas. And also, I didn't have the same pedigree as a classical pianist as a lot of the people there. This was one of the top 10 piano programs in the United States. And they had all been groomed for this. They had gone to really fancy, piano camps that, their teachers charged $100 an hour and they were all from New York City and the East Coast. And, I just loved playing the piano,
How did you end up there? I mean, was it?
I did an audition. I recorded a cassette tape and I got into one of the top 10 piano schools. I mean, but I was definitely the black sheep there, It was like, and, part of it though too was that I had such a passion for other music. And so we'd sort of like, go out of the practice room and they're talking about Mahler's Fifth Symphony with such passion. And I'm just like, can't wait to to hear the new Plaid record. Do you know what I'm saying? So it was just like, ooh, something's not totally right here in terms of what I'm passionate about. And so I sort of had this epiphany, if you will, which it really was, at a certain time when I was down there that was like, okay, I really, I'm only 18 years old. I should really take a risk and try to learn how to make the music I love the most. I don't know how to start. I don't even know how to improvise on the piano, let alone compose. But, like I said, I'm 18 years old. Like it's not too late. It's not too late to try, So that's kind of how it started. And so I stopped studying piano, moved back to Chicago, went to Northwestern, and I got a degree in music technology, where I still played piano for another year there, which was really intense. And it had, music theory, ear training. So I learned a lot about theory, but the composition was electronic. So it was just, like composing with the ARP 2600 we had there, modular Moogs. It had a really amazing studio. One of the few in the States that had national funding. So like Columbia and Princeton had very famous studios, and so did Stanford to do research into electronic music, right?
Right, because a lot of the original, like the early synthesizers and stuff, that was a lot of university study.
Absolutely. So, the kind of music concrete that was within the establishment of classical music. So Stockhausen and Barrio and, guys like this. So studying at Northwestern, we'd actually go to their music library and listen to vinyls of like this crazy electroacoustic stuff. So that was my background. And then, then I got into, when I graduated, I don't know what I thought I was going to do. I thought I was actually going to move to LA and maybe write music for film or something out here. And then it was like September 11th happened. There were no jobs, like blah, blah, blah. And then I just had so many offers to DJ. And I was like, even in university, I was always just like, I'm not a DJ. And they're like, well, we hear you play on the radio. And I'm like, well, I collect records, but like I have my show.
Right.
It's Friday, 9:30 to 11. And like, that's when I DJ.
Yeah. I DJ'd on your show. Do you remember that?
You DJ'd on my show?
Yeah.
When was that?
In Chicago.
No way.
Yeah. I don't know why either of us thought that was a good idea.
That's awesome.
Because I didn't know how to DJ. But yeah, during that like 8 months in 2003 when I was living in Chicago.
When you lived in Chicago, you played on my show. That's dope.
Yeah, it was definitely your show.
Yeah, on the Friday. I used to have so many guests. It was such a good time because it's 9:30 to 11. So I could always have people down who were like going to play later. Right.
Like real DJs who were going to play actual clubs. Not, it was, putzing around on I was living with Adam Wee and Jeff Sapphire, and Jeff had turntables. So I'd been messing around on turntables for 6 months, and me being, just cocky. I'm like, yeah, I'll go on the radio.
You got it on the radio. And well, yeah, for me too. That's why I felt like I was in a DJ too, in a way though. Because, being able to, when you're just there in a room very similar to where we are right now.
Yeah.
Like,
it's actually not that hard. And
you're just focused on it. You're not working a crowd. You're just sort of, in a very like ivory tower, amazing situation. You're like, I'll just
you can actually hear the hi-hats and everything.
You're just like, and you just play like the most like, eccentric selection that you want, whatever. But anyway, long story short, after I graduated, then I ended up, really going for it in terms of producing, and that's also when I started releasing on Ghostly and things. So I just started for 10 years really just making my own electronic music and all that, and then really as time went by, maybe 5 years ago or so, I was sort of like, I don't know, I just felt I wasn't I don't want to say challenged, but I just wanted something more again.
Right.
I just felt like I want to expand myself. I want to grow, and not grow. And I also realized that again, when you're thinking about how excited someone is about doing something, I had a moment when I was at a DC-10 and I was just like, you know what? It's not my dream to be, it was like a certain female DJ who plays at DC-10. And I was like, I actually realized like, I don't want to be, that's not my goal. Right? Like I want to do something else. And so again, I started sort of like peeling the onion, like, what is it? And I realized it was more on the production side, that I felt like I wanted to explore different avenues in terms of what I was producing.
Okay.
And look into maybe scoring some films. That was another thing. I'd scored a couple of films. And
what films?
I scored a documentary here called The Atom Smashers. And that score was on Ghostly. And so you'll hear on there my attempts at orchestration, because I had never learned to compose for orchestra, right? I had studied music theory. But it's pretty funny actually. Like, it's not funny, but I did my best, but I've just got like flutes going on and just like, I'm like trying to do like kind of like string pads and, just play the MIDI notes and, kind of like a Philip Glass inspired soundtrack by someone who doesn't know how to really orchestrate, but understands music and keys and whatever. So that's kind of where I was, and then I did a couple documentaries as well, and I just realized like I had some limitations there. I wanted to be able to kind of know what I was doing more. So yeah, I started looking into different universities because I just thought it's something you really do need to take some time out for.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
one of those you have to learn to paint a bowl of fruit before you can paint the blue dot. And
yeah. It really was, something like that. So, and I was excited as well. So, that's how I ended up moving to London. I got into the Royal College of Music, which is an amazing, amazing conservatory, arguably the best in Europe and the UK. And the deal was that my husband was like, I wanted to leave Chicago. And he was like, if you get into the Royal College of Music, we can move to London. And they accept 10 people a year into this program.
Wow.
And I was like, done. Like, I was so...
You're like, I've already gotten into a school in Miami that I totally probably should not have gotten into, so...
By sending them a cassette, right? So I was like, you know what? I have to just make it happen. I was really getting to a point where I was unhappy in Chicago and just didn't feel... Yeah, I didn't feel inspired there anymore. And I was really just kind of felt stuck in a rut, And that shows. I think there's a time in my music, too, at the end there, where it's just really just sort of like, when life isn't inspiring you, you're just like, you don't have much to give. So I was like, okay. And so, yeah, basically, I just put all my intent into that. I visited the head of the department, before I'd even applied and, spoke with them. And when I was there, when I first met him, he asked me, he's a younger German guy who heads the composition for screen department. And he asked me, he's like, why are you in London? And I was a little hesitant because I was thinking from some of my experience in the States, they look down on electronic music and clubbing and whatever. And I was like, because I'm DJing.
Right.
Like,
okay.
Where are you DJing? And I'm like, at Fabric. And he's like, ooh, he's like, that's very prestigious. And I was like, yes, I am so in the right place. The head of this department thinks it's prestigious. I'm DJing at Fabric, So I invited him. He couldn't go out then, but, so basically, long story short, they really did respect everything with the electronic music. Whereas some of the programs I spoke to here in the States, like NYU, they said that if I was going to make a portfolio, I'd have to start from scratch, that all the electronic stuff, like what I told you, my film scores were but that's for a full film score. You know what I mean? Like, to discount it is not existing.
And how do they expect you to? You're going there so you're applying because you want to learn how to do this.
Yeah.
But you need to have already done this.
Yeah.
To a certain extent in order to
get in. That was the thing. And so at Royal College of Music, I was the only graduate student in composition for screen who hadn't done this, by the way. Every other one is
coming from like an undergraduate program where they had already played with it.
Yeah, they're just mainly classical composers.
Okay.
So that's their medium.
Right.
So it was for screen, and they, some of them maybe knew how to use Pro Tools, but they were writing just usually with no electronics at all. Just maybe a little sound design. But yeah, usually just writing classical scores for orchestra, and that's what they did. So yeah, going in there, it was just, it was cool though, and we all helped each other. I mean, a lot of times, and I learned from a lot of the other composers, just sitting down with them. They were really sweet, and then I'd help master their stuff. I'd be like, oh God. Just just send me your files, okay?
Because you know how to do
make it sound
the nerdy
good.
studio stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could say nerdy studio stuff, but just make it sound good. It's like you can be a good classical composer, but if it's like,
but it doesn't mean you know how to record properly.
Yeah, exactly. If it's not mixed right, and it just sounds really thin, and just not punchy, and just sounds really bad. It doesn't matter how well on paper it looked, right? So yeah, we helped each other, I think, quite a bit, and that's where I started writing for these orchestral instruments. And that was, so composition for screens, like composition for film. So the premise was you were learning to take these orchestral instruments and write film scores. But I studied with an amazing professor who I repeated with 2 years. And basically, he was all about me just figuring out what's my voice using these instruments, rather than sort of what they call like Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mousing is like if for everything that changes in a score, you make a musical thing to go with it, if that makes sense.
Not exactly.
Okay. So like, let's say in a score, if yours a 5-minute film, and especially if it's action or something, so you'd be the music would change to the picture lock based on what's happening, and to get real practice, it depends what you want to do, but you could really focus on learning how to write for action.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Whereas instead what I ended up doing, which was amazing, was just exploring, like I said, finding my own voice with these new instruments and a totally different palette, a huge palette.
Right.
When you're talking about brass, woodwinds, strings, harp, which I fell in love with, pitched percussion, it was just like endless. And I was like, I don't even know the ranges at first. So I was like, my first orchestration class, also this guy was really sweet. He'd be like, Kate, you don't write the violas higher than the violins. Like, the violins are on the top. I mean, this is basic stuff. He could have been like, why are you here?
Right.
Like,
so then you don't have to know how to play these instruments.
No.
Okay.
You just have to learn how they work, and bowing and how they blend. So, yeah, I really, when I say I put my head down, I really put my head down. I just spent 2 years working with players, listening to YouTube videos,
the ultimate music school nowadays.
Yeah. Honestly, just like, what does that instrument sound like here? Different techniques, this orchestration textbook that I was just like rereading pages, sometimes like 5 times in a row, just like so much information on one page. But yeah, so that was a sort of new avenue. And then I met some players that I started working with, again, like just writing electronic tracks and incorporating these instruments, some of which these songs are on the album, actually. These were the first compositions. Yeah, so Tilted was one of the first ones that I did. That's electronic with harp, violin, and upright bass. And the harpist and bassist that I worked with, this was the first year of the college, they're still in the band.
Right.
So it was like genuinely, me trying to figure this out and working with these players, but them also really appreciating having a composer that wanted to learn about their instrument, would sit with them and just be like, what does it sound like if you do this, if you do that? I'd make iPhone recordings, go away, work on it, come back to them. So they were also like, felt like they just were having these kind of custom pieces in a way, and that they were involved, and, much different than a composer just like come in, sit in the room.
Here's a piece of paper, play this,
and go.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I started forming these relationships, and, yeah, that's just sort of how it happened. But again, it's not even classical music. Yeah. Once you hear the album, you'll hear it. But it's weird because the word electronic music defines. It's kind of like how being Jewish is both an ethnicity and a race. Yeah, like electronic music is, in theory, it's like it's a way of, it's the technical way the music is created, but it's also a specific, at this point, a specific set of, sounds, I guess. Yeah. No, totally. No, for sure. So it is like, yeah, you're right. It's like classical, using the classical instruments. Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, totally. But yeah, so that's sort of been the focus of what I've been working on big time, actually, for the past couple of years. So what happened basically is it all culminated when we had a couple shows. We had the first show where it was at the Forge in Camden in London, and we had about 10 people there total. Okay. Yeah. That was the first one. They'd asked me to write a new piece, which I did, which is also on the album, called Shikoku. That's also there. And then the next one was via the college. I managed to book out their opera theater, which is called the Britain Theater. And I
got to ask you, because all of these things sound fancy, because they're London. I don't know any better. How, at what level is the first one was the Forge in Camden?
The Forge in Camden. Okay, so Forge,
how esteemed are these places?
Yeah. Okay, so the Forge is it's just a small place, but it's like a small artsy place. Okay. It's not a big capacity, and the main room, quote unquote, downstairs is like 100 people maximum. Okay. And we were in a small upstairs room. So it was just a
So it's a kind of place, so it's that sort of artsy vibe, like you're trying things out, new. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Small, artsy, very low key. And then, we didn't even have many songs then. It was like we had Tilted, we had Shikoku, which I wrote for that. And then I don't even know what else we played, to be honest. I think our set must have been 30 minutes because it was like we didn't have much content.
Right.
But then I don't remember how it happened really, but it was again through this professor that I was with, and Howard Davidson is his name, and we're still close. I actually scored, co-scored. He did almost all of it, to be honest, but BBC China for him with him, and we also did a series together where I worked on it quite a bit here for PBS, which was Sacred Journeys, which was really cool. It was about world religions and pilgrimages to different religious sites worldwide. So anyway, Howard just really gave me so much confidence because I was coming in with zero experience in terms of this ivory tower classical writing. And he treated me like such an equal in terms of, asking me on professional projects and, really, again, gave me that confidence, which was needed because, again, it could have been really easy for them to be like, why are you even here? Right. I'm not kidding. But they weren't like that. And so I think it was, via him that I found out about this. Well, actually, the previous year, a student had done this too. They had a series where students could do a show. And there's, they have the library, they've got these small places, but they have the Opera Theater, the Britain Theater, which is an amazing 400 capacity seated theater, the nice plush seats and, the curtain and the pit for the orchestra. And, this is the big place. Right. And they had one show, like one day it was available for one student. And I was like, I so want this show. Like, I really want this show, and I want it to be a London Electronic Orchestra show. So I went to them, and at first it was going to be like a 10-piece, smaller ensemble, and we ended up with a 36-piece orchestra.
Wow.
Yeah, all students from the RCM. We had 24 strings. We had 4 saxophones, so we had baritone, tenor, alto, and soprano, which was really cool. We had woodwinds, single winds, vibraphone, marimba, celesta. I mean, we had harp. Piano. I mean, it was amazing. It was great.
So when you're doing a show like this, two things. First, when you're doing a show like this, so now you have 4 different saxophones. Does that mean you need to go rewrite parts?
I rewrite. I
create.
Right.
Okay.
I was just like, I don't even know what I was getting myself into. Yeah.
So you signed up for this thing, and now you have 36 instruments. So now you need to write music for 36 instruments as opposed to the existing songs that were written for 3 instruments.
Yeah, for an hour.
Okay. How long did you have to?
I think I got the show in December, and then I think when I came back from Chicago after Christmas, I think in January and February, this was March 12th, basically January and February, I think I slept 3 hours a night. You know what I mean? Pretty much for 2 months straight. And so then leading up to it, I was like, okay. And then I also collaborated with other composers. That was the other way too that it worked out. So I had a couple other composers come on board. And that's why also on the album, we have a cover of the XX. And so an Italian composer, I really love his style, he orchestrated that. He took the XX intro, which is the intro off one of their albums, and we recreated that. And then I had another cover we did a cover of Daft Punk that another composer did. So we had some other things going on around my music to sort of make it happen. But what was really cool about that show in terms of the story of everything, I looked at that show as sort of okay, I've had an amazing time in London. It's been just, a time of personal growth and musically and just, I don't know if I'm in my visa, it's kind of my last hurrah. You know what I mean? To be able to really do something with orchestra and express myself and just, it's so expensive to usually, get 36 players. Yeah. I mean, that would have been a $20,000 show if you're lucky. You know what I mean? 20,000 pounds, sorry.
Right. So 30 grand.
30 grand for that night, So to be able to have that production level and, it was a great production level in terms of, the sound that they brought in and the engineers. And we had video by Maso Menos. We did interactive video.
Wow,
we did the whole 9. It was we really went for it. And so leading up to that, I was thinking, okay, how am I going to get people here? We need 400 people.
Right.
I was like, maybe I'm going to make posters and put them in the tube station. That's what I was thinking. That was going to be my strategy, my marketing strategy. I was like, I'm going to put posters at the South Kensington tube station. And then like maybe locals will like want to come to the show.
Well, who normally goes to these kind of things? Because I'm thinking, and this is actually the other thing I wanted to bring up. On the one hand, you're like, I can't believe they let me do this. But then they're getting Kate Simko. She plays at the Esteemed Fabric.
Yeah. Yeah, that was true. They knew that I had like a music page with Facebook likes and that I had a following.
you have Facebook fans, yeah.
Got Facebook fans,
probably
man.
more than most of the people that play there.
Yeah,
so.
more than most students in terms of having like a professional, professional career of some sort, I guess, going into it. So, yeah. So what I did is I emailed to all my friends, because I've been working with NGE, so it was like, all the guys who are sort of on the Rebel Agency NGE, which is like, Jamie Jones and Will Newstead, who runs that agency, and all the guys, from that, and my friends from Fabric, and everyone I have met in the music industry in London, basically, just sort of sent out an email with everyone on BCC to maybe like 30 to 50 people, which if you can imagine, just everyone you know.
Sure, yeah.
And every single one of them said, "I'll see you there." Every single one. And tickets were free, so mind you, they were free. And it was sold out within a week.
Okay.
So this was the first student show that sold out, and it sold out like 6 weeks in advance. So I was like, whoa, okay, this is amazing. Like there's an interest in this. And so then going into it again, I was just like, I really felt like it was like sink or swim, though, also. Because I was like, not only am I doing this show now, but like everyone I know
is coming. Yeah,
is coming. Like, oh my god!
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, oh my god, holy shit. But also, like I said, this was going to be sort of like, just doing this to just to do it and just enjoy the fact that I'm able to do it. And it was such an amazing college and just an amazing supportive place and. Try something. And then at that show, so the show went well. I was able to show my face again in the world and everything was fine. And at the show was a manager from 360. So 360 management does like Calvin Harris and Sasha and their umbrella under Rock Nation.
Right,
it's just Jay-Z thing. So like pretty massive.
Yeah. My friend who worked at RA just moved back to LA, and she's like working with Sophie as part of 360. And I was like, Sophie and Jay, like, but I'm like, do you have a Rock Nation email? Do I get to email? Do I get to update your deck from Resident Advisor to Rock Nation? Because that's kind of awesome.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, totally, it is awesome. And so that happened maybe within 3 to 5 days after the concert, that they wanted me to come to their office and meet them and talk to me about what are my plans or how they can help me, take this and bring it into the real world. Right. So I was like, whoa, amazing.
So it actually worked.
Yeah. I mean, and it was like, what was cool about it though is, again, I didn't do that or even invite people thinking that it was even possible. But, it was just it just really, really was something that just has grown organically. And, they helped me do things I would never thought of, like get a logo and, all this kind of stuff.
The logo thing is really funny. I talked to a lot of like DJs about that. I just did a podcast with Dustin Zahn, and I was sitting with Dustin 2 years ago at a burger joint, and he's like, I don't want to make a fucking logo. Like there's something that just feels like weird about it. Like
yeah, for sure. And I don't have one really just for my name, but to have Kate Simko and London Electronic Orchestra. And I mean it's been really cool, and it's been different because also having 6 other musicians that are in the band. So like the core, we did the first with a 36 piece, but in terms of
that's not you can't continuously do that.
Yeah, exactly. So I've sort of rewritten the music for 2 violins, 2 cellos, upright bass, and harp. And then we have a vocalist that kind of like comes in and out. So yeah, it's been really cool to be able to travel and do things with more people. So even like talking about the logo, that it doesn't feel as weird. I can deal with everything that's happening a bit more seeing like the joy that comes to them.
Because you're sharing it with other people.
I'm sharing it with other people, and we're on this journey together. And a lot of them have not traveled. So we did 2 shows in Ibiza, and they were like, "Oh my god!"
Where were the shows in Ibiza?
We did the first one, Boiler Room at the Cirque du Soleil Villa for Jamie. So Jamie Jones, and it was like Ibiza takeover, and these girls were like, "Oh my god!" And so we did the Villa party, and then afterwards I took them to DC-10 because it was like, Paradise was that day, and they're like in the booth at DC-10. The harpist was just like, "This is the best day of my life," basically. You know what I mean? Like it was. So it's just been so cool to, kind of share this journey and just see where it's gonna go. But yeah, now we have an album.
Right, which is out in May, right?
It's out in May.
So.
Yeah.
And then what do you do? Do you tour the album? Is that how you're spending your summer?
Well,
or is summertime is when you need to go DJ at DC-10?
Well, I mean, I will be, which is awesome. I'll be DJing at DC-10 and blah blah blah. We were meant to have like more of a summer tour. Our UK agent had a baby in the fall, and that was like sort of time that you start booking festivals for summer.
Gotcha.
And basically kind of didn't really tell us what was going on, and then February 1st quit being our agent. And the festival bookings are like kind of done by the end of Feb.
Right.
So, in that window, we've done our best, and we've kind of we're playing festival number 6, and we're playing a couple others, but unfortunately when we had a new agent look into it, the great thing is there was a few places that were like, we would have loved to have booked you. Booked you, and a couple, like we did Festival last year, and they're like, yeah, went great last year. Why do you wait so long? So the thing is,
yeah. So there's interest there. You just maybe have to wait another.
We might have to wait till the next festival year, and it is what it is. It's like we did the London launch. We're gonna do a show in Berlin.
Where in Berlin?
I believe there's a new club below Soho House.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Inside Soho.
So he's like below Soho House.
Right.
It's in the building where the store is as well. I don't know if you know that the store. So it's kind of like a really cool furniture.
Yeah, I hadn't made it there, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
right.
so it's in that building.
Okay.
And so yeah, we're gonna play there, and we're gonna hopefully do a show in New York. I hope so. Yeah.
Anything in LA?
I'd love to do LA too. I mean, I think to start, if we can just do New York and sort of like make a splash, have some people see it, because I want to bring a couple of players. I mean, if we get an offer in LA, that'd be amazing. But it is easier to fly from London to New York and bring a couple players.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it'll depend on offers. But yeah, LA, I would love to play here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, you do have a summer full of DJing.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly.
Has it felt better? Because you said you had this this moment where you're like, I don't want to be this DJ that you were watching, and so you went in this other direction. It was what, a 4-year journey?
Yeah, 4 years.
Which did you find? I mean, that had to be a little scary to be like, am I maybe throwing away my living?
Yeah.
Can I come back 4 years? Or even at this, well, I want to come back.
Yeah.
So what's it been like? Kind of coming back in.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I mean, when I first moved to London in 2012, that was when I had my most successful song. And DJing, it's sort of, having a big hit, if you will, is a lot of times like how your DJing goes up and your requests go up. So I had a track that was on Leftroom, Go On Then, featuring Jem Cook, that ended the year in like the top 10 deep house tracks. It was a big track. And that came out in the spring of 2012, and then I moved to London, and I had so many good requests that I said no to because I was studying,
right.
And so at that time, things were going really well, but I had told my agent I can only play once a month, really, with how much work and how much I want to focus. I could have played more, but I had so much I wanted to learn. So just like one, maybe twice in a month. And so, yeah, I mean, there was a great momentum then, and even by the time it was the next summer, saying no to certain clubs, it's like when my agent was like, "Well, she's available now this summer," and it's like, no, like it's just sort of like they ask you when when they have a slot for you. I wasn't at the level where it's like I can come back and be like, hey,
now I'm here.
Yeah, now I'm here, and this is the date I want. They're like, cool, that's the date you want, because we want to book someone else. So yeah, I mean, it was definitely like, but I guess I just believe that you have to be a risk taker. You really, you don't have to, but if you don't want to have regrets, you have to you have to take a risk in order to go for things and not regret trying. You don't want to regret not trying, is what I'm trying to say, right? I didn't want to regret not trying. Right. So
better to regret something you did than something you didn't do.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Okay.
That I knew that what I was learning to write for orchestra, I mean, that's like the most exciting thing I've done in my adult life. It's like, it has been incredible. Such an incredible experience, and like such an enriching experience. It was like such a privilege, to go to school across from Royal Albert Hall. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It's freaking amazing. So yeah, it's like, I did that by choice, and yeah, when some of these clubs, now it's kind of coming back, because now I've been able to just kind of be there, and now when they ask if it's good for them, I can say yes.
Right.
And I'm based in London, so it's
you can
easier.
get anywhere pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of DJing, I was also telling my friend who I had lunch with today, it's been I've fallen back in love with it more, because it feels like such a release. And even when I played that once or twice when I was studying, I would go, or even now, I just feel like I'm relieving stress. I'm expressing myself to the crowd. I'm having fun. I genuinely play music that I love, so I'm into it. For me, I'm just like, yeah, I love this track. You know what I mean?
Was there a point where you weren't?
That's a good question, and I guess the answer must have been yes. I think that at a certain point before I moved to London and I was just DJing as a job, looking at it like that, I don't want to say a job, but that was sort of like 2 times a weekend, looking at my success in my life based on how many shows I had in a month. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if you have an off weekend, like, oh, I'm a loser, I don't have any DJ shows this weekend, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are like that. It's like, income, is one thing, but just also in terms of momentum, you're afraid that you're going to lose your momentum, or if a promoter looks at your calendar and you're not booked every weekend, like they actually want to book you less.
Right.
It's a snowball
self-fulfilling
effect.
prophecy. Yeah.
It totally is. So it's, I think at that time, maybe I was just like playing what I thought I needed to play. But now, yeah, I don't know though. I've never really been a sellout. So I guess all I can say is now that I'm coming back to it, I just am enjoying it.
Okay, there's you never have this sense of like these people are idiots. No. I've played the opera.
Oh, no.
Or you find it less challenging.
You know what? No. I really like how they balance each other. I mean, people within classical, it's great to work with them in terms of they're super reliable. They're never late. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's certain things that are amazing. Like, it's very precise and, it's very organized. And there's things I love about them. But, I love the freestyle, kind of let your hair down and freedom of electronic music. And, I've met really amazing intellectual people on the classical side and wild people on the classical side. My girls are not wild, right. By the way. I am the one that's like, go home, like after Biza and stuff, I sent some of them actually on a 1 a.m. flight because I was like, I don't want you going to the party. The harpist had to beg me. I was like, fine. Like they were like, back to London.
Are you like den mother with
this? Like den mother? No. I mean, like, I really enjoy performing. I enjoy sharing music with people, whether it's the live show with them or DJing. So it's like, for me, I really enjoy performing. I don't get nervous, and it's like I'm having fun, and when it's game time, it's just sort of like I'm just enjoying it, and I'm not like worrying about them.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I think we have.
But I mean, not when you're performing, but like, because
just
obviously everyone's professional, but like you said, like
yeah, like look, yeah, like I feel
go home,
don't
go to the villa, go home.
Go to the villa, go home. You know what? I think I'm over that more now because we've worked together for a good 3 years. Where, but yeah, at the beginning I felt like that. I felt responsible for them,
right?
And actually, a couple times they were like, Kate, like, this is not our first rodeo. You're not introducing me to the world. Okay, like thanks for thinking that I'm like a 10-year-old who's never experienced the world out there, but like I have. So actually, I had 2 or 3 of them basically say that to me, and I was like, okay, I just didn't want to be the one who corrupted you or something. And
she has such a promising career as a cellist.
Right? No, exactly. No, exactly. That's the last thing I wanted on my conscience.
Right.
That, pedigree ready to go to LSO, London Symphony, and then like, sorry, here at LEO, that's all you're gonna get now. You know what I mean?
That's
Derailed.
Not so bad. That's not so bad. It might, could, the two could merge.
There you go.
You never know.
Yeah, right?
So
cool.
Awesome. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up then.
Yeah, totally. I don't know how long these go, but it seems like
until fatigue sets in, which is usually about an hour.
About an hour. No, it seems good. I'm trying to think if there's anything else related to add. I guess not.
Yeah, I mean this will be out. I don't know, with 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
So I don't know. Yeah, like that far in advance. You already said the festivals you guys are doing this summer.
Yeah. So 4 to 6 weeks. We should have another single out actually right around then. So
okay.
We'll have another single.
What's going to be the single?
I think it's going to be Shikoku.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a more classical.
Is the first single out the one with Seth?
Yes.
On the remix?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that I've not heard.
You have not heard that?
I've not heard Seth's remix.
Okay.
No.
Do you collect vinyl still? I can give you a vinyl copy.
No.
Really,
I had to when I made the move to Berlin.
Yeah.
That was the whatever remnants of the vinyl. I'd been dropping the vinyl before, but I was like, okay, yeah. No,
okay. Cool. So I'll just send you a link to the WAV files or whatever.
Awesome. Yeah. Love to hear it.
Cool. Yeah, that was out in February. So it's Tilted, which was the track I mentioned, was the first song.
Right.
And then so Seth remixed that. So Seth's a really close old friend of mine.
Do we say Troxler? Do we say his last name?
Yeah, Seth Troxler.
I was making sure that for the audience.
Yeah,
I think he's come up a few times. I don't know if we've ever said which Seth.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so Seth Troxler did the remix with Phil Maffa as well. So Phil Maffa is an engineer and producer in New York who runs Butcha Sound. And so Seth and Phil have a new project called Lost Souls of Saturn. And
it's very Seth sounding from
Yeah, it is. Lost Souls of Saturn, LSOS. And they're sort of combining also some weird opera and classical samples within this album they've done. So that was one of the reasons that I thought that it'd be really cool to get them on board. And yeah, they did a killer remix. You have to check it out.
Yeah, I want to hear it. And then what about the second single? Who's doing the remixes?
We're still working that out, to be honest. We have Fort Ramo remix of one of the tracks, but then, right now we've sort of like, I had like a really amazing wish list of just like dream lists that we've kind of gone through, which was like Fortet and Bonobo and a couple other guys like this that, I just think would have absolutely slayed it.
But just couldn't do it or wouldn't do it. Yeah.
They just are so busy, and they sent really nice messages back. Caribou as well, sent a sweet email back just saying, I haven't done any remixes in a while. I have a family now. Like, I can't keep up. It's like, when you're at, like,
yeah. Yeah, it's like Fortet does like one remix a year.
Yeah.
It's...
Yeah, totally. Floating Points. He was actually considering, which is close, but it was just same thing, just like inundated.
Yeah.
So, we went through this
These are something like Ricardo would like to fuck with.
I think so too. I suggested Ricardo. Yeah, maybe I need to bring him back up to label. But, we're kind of just like waiting. What I've told the label too is like, I'm not just keen to just like get a remix. Like let's just wait and get a, amazing remix.
Yeah, or who says you have to have a remix?
That's another thing too, right? Maybe we'll just, so for Shikoku, it's definitely going to come out without a remix, I think. We'll do the ambient version. And then, later on, we'll have a remix of it come out when it's done by the right person.
Great.
Yay.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Josh, for having me.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Cool.
That's it for this episode of the Rave Curious Podcast. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more conversations with key players in the electronic music community. If you like what you heard on this podcast, let us know. You can give us a shout on Twitter at Rave Curious. You can also like us on Facebook, Rave Curious Podcast. And of course, subscribe on iTunes to make sure you never miss an episode. That's it. Thanks for listening.